Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Mokitsi Tekere. We are just 5 minutes into delay as we're waiting for the panelists, the Sento. Please bear with us for the next 2 minutes, and we should get started with today's session. Thank you very much.
So unza hotel. Yeah, no, I have to leave.
Okay, colleagues, let me first of all start by apologizing. This is not normal that we should delay 10 minutes into a session. My apologies for that. For those that are joining and are just late into this session, my name is Mokitsi Tekere. Today we had actually invited Mike Sento. Mike Sento is a well-known entrepreneur, one of the very fairly so sorry about that. So as I was mentioning, today's session was looking at hosting Mike Sento. While we wait for him, he might be having connectivity issues. I thought we could just jump straight into the theme for today. The aim really for us is to discuss the agriculture sector in Botswana, specifically in terms of curbing the huge import bill that, as you know, we literally survive on 90% import for our food. Also, you also might know this as general knowledge, as I like to say it. Botswana has vast amount of land, and it really has puzzled me personally as to why we've never had an equivalent of a DBS company. What I mean by this specifically is that we've we've built great success with the mining sector, specifically the focus on the diamonds. But I wonder, with our second asset being land, how come we have not been able to build or replicate a similar Botswana type of company or DBS type of company in the agriculture value chain? Also, as you know, we've got really nascent farming ecosystem. Our farmers have been farming since 1966, okay, way before even the independence. But it's really seems that the collaborations that we've had in this sector or either from the way the produce comes from the farm to the towns to the cities, it's never been really built and made into something that can be a benchmark. Then obviously there's a question in terms of whether if government has been investing appropriately in terms of the instruments that are there to support the early stage farmer or the early stage entrepreneur. We know of many failures in the agriculture value chain, but we wanted to look at these discussions to see how we could better leverage this, because we know that we have also less young people going to the farms, but we know the young people are the ones with the energy that could till the land. Lastly, we were looking at really initiating a new dialogue around how do we influence the political landscape to start seeing agriculture as the next frontier. Also, how do we bring in a new type of entrepreneur, what we call an ag tech entrepreneur. Ag tech would stand for agricultural technology. So, and obviously, and link this to the digital economy that Botswana is looking at adopting. And lastly, and more in conclusion from my side, in terms of the law or the citizen economic empowerment law, do we think the necessary infrastructure is in place to ensure that the Botswana that would, you know, be aligned to this law would benefit? And these are questions that I seek to understand today. So I would like at this juncture to open up for discussion while we await Sento to come into the contribution. I believe that we all came in because we're interested in the subject and we've got something to say. Just for protocol purposes, usually this session is run for 40 minutes. It will conclude exactly in 40 minutes. It is being recorded. It will go on our YouTube channel, which the link will be shared with you on the chat box. And you can freely share the discussion after with others. You can also follow the live, the live session of this particular discussion on Facebook, on live Mwana Africa. The session is being live streamed as we speak right now. So at this juncture, let me open up. I have not muted anybody. You have just self-muted yourselves. So I would suggest that we speak in turns, and then we will come back to Resento if he's able to connect with us. So I will, at this point, like to give over to the audience to make participative commentary. Anyone who would like to make a comment? I'm going to handpick deliberately. Sindisi Gilika, you are the first person on my list. Is there anything specific you would like to make a comment around the agriculture value chain and your observation?
Thank you, Mr. Moketi. Well, from my perspective, I believe the future of Botswana is bright, but we just have to connect all these dots together such that we may be able to get the desired result at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, what's important is the results we get, not the thoughts. Because if we don't put it into action, put it in a paper, we're just talking hot air in the long run. So from my perspective, it's about being inclusive and this push of equality such that everybody can be able to get access to the same opportunities and resources, and also to see push the best practices forward first, such that it's some sort of a guiding light to everyone, and then it's an even playing field with everybody having connection to internet, access to the same resources. Like some people don't even have access to Google right now, and even in the rural areas, to have everybody can have access to. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So you mentioned a very interesting point of discussion, which for my perspectives is actually true. Um, you know, for these sort of dialects obviously to work, people need to be connected. I mean, I sit in the capital where I get to enjoy access to internet. Okay, it's not so good, but at least I've got access. But there are those people who we know are actually tilling the land, and they're actually the people feeding the nation. But 90% of these people are literally not connected. What it means is that they don't have access to information, meaning that the ordinary farmer who could immediately come into this sort of platform to share their insights may actually have the barrier of having not access to internet. And I think that basic sense of what you're saying is that we need to enable two things. One is education. And I don't mean education in the sense of get up in the morning, go to school, get a degree, and go and learn how to become a farmer. No, we're talking about the experience on how to actually commercially develop a real farming business, okay? And I think to do that, you need a different type of education. You need an education that is driven from really the land perspective. You want to make sure that the farmer that can produce commercially has experience. Then you combine that experience with intellect, okay? And when I say intellect, I'm talking where you are able to pull people like data scientists, computer scientists, business developers, and aggregate them into the value chain such that I'm able to even predict the yield. For example, last week we came across a certain technology where, for example, when I say education again, before you actually buy land, you can go to a certain tech company, which is classified as an ag tech company, and they can actually go and plug some technology into the soil, and they will show you that this land was used for over the last 30 years, was used for the following things. And they can also predict for you whether if that land is going to produce yield for you, yes or no. Okay, so to be able to get that sort of information, obviously you need education. And we're not saying, we keep repeating, it's not about education that you get in the school. This is education based on lifelong learning. Okay, so these are some of the technologies that we sort of are recommending here as we discuss. So the other thing that Musindisi speaks about here is that you need infrastructure, okay? And when he says infrastructure, he's talking about taking internet to the farmer, okay? It doesn't make sense for you to connect the fastest internet to people in the city only, whereas you create a gap between people in the actual production line and to those that are sitting in the market. What that actually happens, it creates a void in between the market and the actual producer, okay? Therefore, meaning that the value chain cannot be able to connect. So access becomes an issue of infrastructure. So we need to start thinking about how do we build infrastructure for the farmer, okay? Such that the guy producing food in Maung can easily know what Pick and Pay in or Spa in Gaborone is buying today in need, so that he can make his yield prediction. Okay, so this is sort of the two recommendations that I picked out of your recommendations, Msindisi. I'll just go to the chat box, colleagues. We also have Tekla making a comment here that, you know, lack of information. He said there's a strong lack of information among farmers. Obviously, the solution therefore meaning that we need data scientists and also we need tech. Now, here's a question that I want to ask everybody in this session today is, do we all understand what are data scientists? Do we also understand what is tech in agriculture? Because we need the ordinary farmer in any village, in any town, or in any city to understand what these two things mean, okay? We shouldn't confuse simple things like data scientists or tech with complicated jargon. We need to simplify that language such that if I'm a farmer and I'm interested in learning, how do you convince me to say I must hire a data scientist, as opposed to me just hiring people that come and they till the land and they disappear, okay? So this goes back to discussion again to say, are farmers over the years putting in the right human capital in their farms or within their investment? Or is this blended resources and capabilities not being inputted into the farming? Okay, so at this juncture, before I analyze, I provide an analysis. I would like to open up for further comments. If anyone has any comments, please just unmute yourself and make a comment so that we can have a discussion with you.
Okay, me. Okay, I could like to. Okay, me.
Okay, I have two people, Adeline and Tekla. Can you please mute yourselves? Okay, I think we have lost Tekla. Do I have another person who wants to comment?
Okay, me. Okay, I
Okay, please go ahead.
Let me comment on data scientists. I personally work in the Ministry of Agriculture, Namibia. We really have a big challenge when it comes to data scientists, because data scientists is when you are studying online to be aware of the information before you step in something, which most of they are lacking of that opportunity before they are stepping in agricultural practice. They lack of information, because even ourselves, Ministry of Agriculture, we don't avail the information that a data scientist person or company can do, which is also contributing to the failure. Because when a person is lack of information and the information is not delivered on time, like let me say, if the information was available online, where a person will inquire the information before doing first. That's why data scientist is very important right now at this time, so that people know what.
Okay, thank you very much, Tekla. I think we have another colleague who would like to make a comment. I've unmuted you. Please go ahead. I've got two colleagues. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had to stay awake until midnight. I'm in Australia right now because it's an interesting discussion. One of the things that I found here, I'm here for study anyway, but I have so much interest in agriculture. And one of the things that I have found is that I think you are talking about data scientists, but I'm also going to look at it from a point where I think we have not decentralized our systems to a point where we can warehouse data closer to the farming or production land. For instance, in Botswana, if you are to ask for some particular information, perhaps some data, sometimes you'll have to go all the way to headquarters. For instance, if you are a farmer in Khanzi, where you are supposed to be getting information closer in Khanzi, you'd find that that information is not warehoused there, and that expertise is not available near you. So one of the things as we move forward to try to develop the agricultural sector is to move the important services such as warehousing data and its expertise closer to the production land. That's my comment. Thank you.
Sorry, we just want to capture your name, and you said your name is?
My name is Abia, A-B-I-A.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's just apologize that you had to wait till midnight, and we really appreciate you joining from Australia with such insights. We will keep track of your work. And I think just while you are there, and so that I can just make a comment for the other colleagues that are joining in, you know, this issue of building data warehouses. I think it's not a common thing in Africa specifically. I mean, we came across last week because we had a sit down with the Vice Chancellor of Buen, which is the Botswana University of Agriculture and Natural Resources last week. We had the privilege to sit down with him, and we actually picked that one of the missing elements in the agriculture value chain is access to data. And it's also not just any type of data. It's data that makes sense, okay? It's data that's been sequenced and arranged in a certain way such that when you mine it, it's able to influence decision-making. And we came across two companies, okay? One is called Aero Robotics, which is a South African-based company, which is recently IPO'd for about 100 million rands. The company, what it does, if you look them up, they actually mine data on citrus fruits. And they're doing work across the world as a South African company. And their headquarters sits in Cape Town in a small little office, okay? You wouldn't imagine that this is a company actually doing data mining in the agriculture value chain. So for markets like Botswana, I've never heard of any company doing this. And I think, Abi, where you sit, this is a business opportunity from where I sit for somebody to create this, because it won't be done by government. Because certainly you say government has too much data, they just don't know what to do with it. But also the issue of just lack of, do we have even data scientists that are able to play in this field of agriculture? Are they trained to know what they need to do to mine the data? What do we do to bring such skill into the ecosystem? So I think definitely with your insights, with agreement to our colleague, Tekla from Namibia, the idea of that perspective, from a region perspective, it needs to be addressed. So I would like at this point maybe to take other colleagues to make comment on this discussion around really how do we transform the agriculture value chain from a technology perspective, and obviously also how do we create solutions that will open up the markets for the young person or for the young Botswana or the young entrepreneur in Africa to actually tap into agriculture and not see it as a barrier. So the floor is open for making comments. I had a hand from Unami. Would you like to speak? I think we had seen you come into the platform. Do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead?
everyone, with trade issues and also customs. So I got this link for the meeting. So I just got interested to come and listen and hear, so that next time when you go to the trade negotiations and when we try to do African continental trade negotiation, I'm actually the senior expert on rules of origin, where we determine the origin of goods. So I just got interested just to come and listen and hear more about agriculture and how we can, as we draft our rules of origin, how are we going to protect our agriculture from goods coming out.
Yeah.
Instead of relaxing the rules of origin, but making them most we trade within ourselves and getting agricultural goods from outside. So I'll be listening. I'll comment later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's great to get somebody from the government participating in this technology discussions. This is a great milestone. We appreciate your input. For those that are coming in to this session, we are discussing really how to influence the citizen economic empowerment law from an agriculture perspective. We are trying to look at really the transformation journey of agriculture in Botswana specifically, from really what are the missing gaps, also what value addition do we think we can input such that we can make sure we leverage agriculture as the next frontier for Botswana. Okay, I think we all acknowledge that it's a great sadness that we have to import 90% of our food. Just that on its own is a threat to the country. But for me personally, I would like to ask those that are participating today to say, those that have studied agriculture say that if you want to increase productivity of GDP, okay, you can only do it between 2% and 18%. You can't go beyond that. So my question is, based just on the Botswana's agriculture sector, how do we increase the productivity in the agriculture? Because there seems to be, one, a political will and commitment towards agriculture. There is funding definitely for agriculture all across, from my own perspective and what I've seen. We have the institutions. For those that don't know, Botswana is probably the only country that has a university focused on agriculture in Southern Africa. Also, by capital, I think we are probably the second largest country that has invested so much in agriculture in this region outside South Africa. Generally, when you look at other countries like Rwanda, who don't have the same fiscal strength like Botswana, their second biggest contributor to GDP, or even the highest contributor for Rwanda, seems to be agriculture. Yet that country doesn't have the fiscal strength and the resources and the capabilities similar to Botswana. What's the missing gap outside the strength that we see in terms of just the beef value chain? What can we do to make sure that 50% of our crop comes from Botswana, such that we don't have to say vegetable production arona, we get it from South Africa. And then two, we find that 80% of the fruits, those that don't know, 80% of the fruits that you guys eat in Botswana, they come from outside. That means 20% come from Botswana. So the apple that you eat from Pick and Pay, you eat from Spa, comes from Cape Town. And it comes from Limpopo also. But these are people that are close to the Botswana border. It's just the fence. What separates us is the border. But how come they are able to produce and we are not able to produce? So I think these are questions that I would like to get perspectives on before we come to a conclusion in terms of what are the next steps in terms of really influencing the law and increasing the productivity. We have a colleague there who have commented that she agrees on the essence of increasing productivity, but by creating data sets. So I think this goes back to the colleague from Australia who said that there needs to be an ecosystem assessment of the data sets to measure where the data, what the data is saying, and to ultimately turn that data into some sort of value. So maybe let me give back to the colleagues in the audience to make some comments before we come to wrapping up the session. I see my good friend Remutang. I would like to unmute him because I don't see any hand raised to say, Remuta, I know you are a farmer. Do you have any insights to share in terms of how we can make this a better contributor to GDP?
Hi. Sorry I got in late. Oh, I didn't know you guys are going to touch a very interesting subject today. Yeah, well, I think one of the other things that needs to be done is that we've been taught agriculture to be a subsistence level. Maybe I'm going to talk from an education perspective since I'm also an educator. But I think we need to also commercialize it to a sense from the grassroots. Like for instance, we are still learning that commercial agriculture at primary and secondary level. And right now, I think agric has also advanced to things like hydroponics and aquaponics, which is in line with technology. So I think in a way, we need to also learn those new advancements in agriculture and infuse them into our curriculum at a lower level, so that we can also we can learn and see the practical side of things, because we always think agric always has to do with going to the fields and staying in the fields, but nowadays you can even do it from a warehouse or whatever it is. So I think in that case we need to infuse the technological aspect also at academic level to change the mindsets and advance our techniques. But like we mentioned, we lack the data and the expertise, but I think we can move there.
Thank you very much, Remotang, for your insights and contribution. Colleagues, I only have 1 minute to take one last comment. Anybody with the last comment?
Can I comment?
Yes, you can.
Just quickly, one of the things that I also picked is that our land tenure system is not assisting agriculture in terms of, I think the way we allocate pieces of land around the country for farming will make it very difficult to form clusters that can be a high production areas. Labo Fellow, I think with using your influence, could you please suggest that as they implement or they decide on the citizen economic law, they set up a commission responsible for that law? And
Okay, colleagues, I seem to have lost Abe, but I think the summary from him is that there needs to be some commission set up around this discussion of the law.